Joining us now, Senator Ted Cruz, chairman of the Commerce Committee's Aviation Subcommittee, who will be at the hearing today. Senator Cruz, it's good to see you again. And a couple of moments ago, our guest host said that at this point, the CEO just can't stay, that Mr. Muhlenberg, that there needs to be a break at the top, given everything we know at this point, as it's, been, all these additional data points have come out over the last 3, 4, 5 months. Do you agree with that? Is that what's really needed here, do you think, at this point?
Well, I think that's a question for Boeing shareholders and for their board to decide, but I do think it is important that there be real accountability. There are a lot of questions that still need to be answered, that Boeing needs to be answered. So I think their testimony today is very important. Number one, retrospectively, looking backwards, what went wrong? How was this plane designed with this new system, the so-called MCAS system, that adjusts the tilt of the nose downward? How was it designed without safety mechanisms to prevent the tragic accidents that happened not once but twice? How was the regulatory system designed? What were the incentives within the regulatory systems to sign off on this change that caused so much danger? And moreover, why were pilots not trained on this? Why was there no training that the system has changed, that it was no longer the case that when you pull back on the yoke, it would disengage the stabilization? That's what prior 737s had, but not the 737 MAX. Those questions, ultimately answering those questions, will answer why 346 souls were lost in 2 tragic accidents. Going forward, we need to ask, how can we prevent this from happening again? What needs to change, either at Boeing or in the FAA oversight, to make sure this doesn't happen again?
Well, that's the other question, and that's the FAA. And with all the budget constraints in Washington, and especially from people like you, Senator, and the GOP, you want to watch every penny. So suddenly the FAA farms out some of their duties to the company that they're looking at in terms of judging whether there's safety. What do you do? Does it need more funding? Does it need to be more effective? Does someone need to resign from the FAA? I mean, what happens there?
Look, I think those are all questions that the committee is examining. There is always a danger, particularly when you're dealing with big companies that are subject to active regulation of what's called agency capture, of the regulatory agency becoming too cozy, too much in bed with a giant corporate player. I think there's considerable concern in the FAA context that may well have occurred here, that there was so much back and forth between the FAA and Boeing that you didn't have anyone really watching the store and asking the hard questions of are we ensuring that the safety prevention is there? Are we ensuring that the pilots receive the training they need to keep people safe? And what I think is critical here is the flying public needs to be confident that when you put your family on a plane, your family is going to be safe. And these crashes have shaken that confidence, which jeopardizes. There are tens of thousands of jobs in my home state of Texas and across the country that depend upon a vibrant, successful aviation industry. And if the confidence of the flying public is shaken, that's a real problem.
Will this have a favorable outcome, do you think, Senator? And by that I mean the engines were moved in the interest of saving fuel and emissions and everything else. And the previous version of the 737 MAX, I don't think needed an MCAS system. Is it down the road someday going to be completely airworthy, where everyone will say goodbye to if they're sending their family off somewhere, and not in the back of their mind there won't be the slightest question that this isn't a safe aircraft?
Look, I very much hope so. I think that's a real objective for Boeing, to get these planes back in the air. But to do that, they've got to be able to convince people that they're airworthy, that their families are going to be safe. I know I have heard from a number of airline CEOs that they have high confidence in the safety of the planes, and it is still the case that it is safer to get on an airplane and fly somewhere than it is to drive to the airport in your automobile, and that safety is important. In this instance, that there are a number of ways these accidents could have been prevented. Simple redundancy. The accident started because of a bird strike, a bird that sheared off a little sensor that's right outside the cockpit called the angle of attack sensor, and it was sheared off the plane. And the problem was, when that happened, the computer believed the nose was pointing up. And so as a result, the computer automatically started correcting to point the nose down. The pilots didn't know what was going on. They didn't know why it was doing that. This was a new system. That could have been prevented. You could have redundant angle of attack sensors. You can have a system where when you have contrary information and data coming from the redundant sensors that you don't automatically engage the stabilization. You can have pilot training so they know what this is. All of those are steps that it seems to me should have been done, and I expect we're going to discuss all of those at considerable length in the hearing today.
Senator, just switching gears quickly, if we have a sitting senator, we obviously need to talk about these things. So the latest move by the Speaker here, this is still not a vote to authorize an inquiry, and it's supposedly being done because all the Republicans are doing is arguing about process, and the Democrats want to focus on the substance of what this is all about. Will this do it for you and your colleagues in terms, is this a real vote on an impeachment inquiry like we saw with Bill Clinton and Richard Nixon and going all the way back? Is it?
Well, look, we'll have to see what the specific terms are that the House votes on. I'm glad they're voting. They needed to vote. They've been unwilling to vote so far. So being willing to vote is a step in the right direction. But fundamentally, what we're seeing going on in the House has all the trappings of a kangaroo court. The proceedings are still going on in secret. The minority is still denied the right to subpoena witnesses. That means cross-examination of the witnesses. The American people can't see what the actual evidence is. And instead, the way they're operating is the partisan Democrats are leaking out snippets of these secret testimony as it suits them politically. That's not fair. It's not right. It's not how the House handled the impeachment of Bill Clinton. It's not how the House handled the impeachment of Richard Nixon. Both of those proceedings had rules in place to protect due process, to ensure fairness. Today's Pelosi Democrats have made virtually no efforts to ensure due process or fairness. And the reason is they have a partisan objective in mind. You know, it reminds me of the book Alice in Wonderland. Verdict first, trial later. They want to impeach the president, and their behavior certainly indicates they don't particularly care about what the facts are that are a predicate for doing so. They've wanted to impeach him since November 2016 when the American people elected him.
In the current, this latest thing, it's not Russia, it's a totally different, obviously, subject that we're talking about here. Have you already rendered a verdict without knowing everything? Is there any way that you would ever come to a yes for conviction in the Senate, or have you already made your mind up with a verdict first that there's nothing could rise to the level of an impeachable offense? Are you there?
Listen, I think we should investigate what happened. I voted along with all 100 senators. We all voted to refer this matter to the Senate Intelligence Committee, a bipartisan committee to investigate what happened. I think, sure, we should investigate what happened and be open to ascertaining the true facts. That is a very different thing than what the House is doing. You know, you look at the House a few months ago, 93 House Democrats voted to impeach the president simply because he criticized the so-called squad, these freshman House members who said so many outlandish things. And for 93 of them, that was enough to impeach the president, to remove a democratically elected president. I think at the end of the day, what's driving the circus that's going on in the House is a rage and hatred for the president rather than a fidelity to facts. The Senate, I hope and believe, will have a much greater fidelity to facts. And under the Constitution, the threshold to remove a sitting president committing high crimes and misdemeanors as found by 2/3 of the Senate, that threshold is very high. And based on what's public right now, I think we're nowhere near close to that. There may be the partisan votes in the House to impeach, but based on what we know now, I think it is extraordinarily unlikely that the president would be removed. And that's the way it should be. It's the way the constitutional system is meant to operate.
All right, Senator, thank you. And we'll be watching with the whole Boeing situation. We have to do a lot of different, we got to know about a lot of different things, don't we, Senator, in this,
Absolutely.
In this world? I mean, it's just, I mean, it's like there's like 10 elephants in every room. It's like,
by the way, Astros win in 6. We're winning tomorrow night.
That's pretty amazing. The last 3
tonight,
games.
rather.
Man, they went to a higher gear or something, didn't they?
It's been beautiful.
Would you think he'd get booed in Houston like that, Senator?
I think it would be a very different place. The president has a lot of supporters in Houston. I think he would get a lot of applause and some boos. Look, we're a divided tie.
Yes, we are. All right, Senator. Thanks a lot.
Thank you. Coming up.